Hello, Internet. My name is Bernanarchy. Welcome back to Gregtech New Horizons. Last week, we built this Project Red transportation-based oil processing setup, and we now have access to MV tier fuel diesel, as well as to polyethylene. Lots and lots of polyethylene. I've taken the time to hook up an output of this over to our EBF as well, so that's now diesel powered. Diesel is a great source of power out here in the dirty chunks, but because combustion generators do make pollution, we're not going to be able to just pump diesel over to the clean chunks and use it for our base over there. That means that we do still need to expand our steam power as we get further into MV. The steam that we've had available so far has been barely sufficient, and I do want to get all this upgraded. So I'm going to go ahead and double the number of coke ovens that we have here, and we're going to start burning some of that coke instead of just for our BBFs and in these small generators. I'm going to go ahead and make a Railcraft solid boiler with high pressure tanks, the steel tanks, and that is going to get us a pretty efficient use of our coal coke blocks. And then I'm also going to have to expand this low pressure boiler. I do still want this boiler to be oversized for the amount of creosote we make so that we can continue to ensure that all of our coke ovens can run so that we still have coke available for the BBF. And also because we're converting our coke into blocks, the ratios aren't perfect between the liquid and the solid fuel boiler anyway. So this one's going to stay low pressure, even though that's a little bit less efficient. There is one change that I want to make to this setup, and that is that we're going to go ahead and get rid of this redstone clock. Now that we are deep enough in LV that pumps are relatively inexpensive, we can just put pumps directly on the output creosote pipe, and that'll pull the creosote from the coke ovens into the pipe system. We're also going to need a couple more water tanks in addition to the coke ovens in order to run all of the steam that we need to run. And there we go. This is our upgraded steam setup. The high pressure boiler is pulling about 6 coke ovens worth. The low pressure boiler can pull about 7.7 coke ovens worth of creosote. So I do have a tank here for when we're pulling the full 8 coke ovens worth of solid production. But as soon as our coke blocks back up, and I expect they will because we don't run the BBF continuously, then we'll be down to just 6 worth, and this will burn through the creosote. So it's technically a little underspecified if the BBFs were running full-time, but at some point it will be able to drain this buffer and it won't be running full-time, and that's why it's a low-pressure boiler, because they work a little bit better at generating steam when they're not running continuously. So between the two of these, we now have very nearly 12,000 steam a second, which is like 4 or 5 times what we had before. So this will hopefully get us through MV and all of the new MV machines that we're going to be needing. Before we get further into MV stuff, though, we do have a little bit of LV stuff to do, and that's getting this basic sifting machine. Now that we're pulling twice as much coal, I really want to be getting better yields from our coal ore. And the sifting machine is going to 8x our coal yield. Making the sifting machine, though, requires these item filters, and to make these, we do need a little bit of polyethylene. So I'm going to have to grab a couple of polyethylene cells. Zinc foil isn't too bad. Fine steel wire isn't too bad because we're not yet making carbon mesh. And then we're going to be able to make this sifting machine. And with our zinc foil and the steel wire, we are able to make our first couple of these item filters. Something to note is that molten polyethylene is considered hot. So you do have to keep it in your active hand, and you do have to use the pizza gloves. But in just a couple of minutes, we'll have our filters, and everything else that this basic sifting machine needs is pretty standard and pretty straightforward. And there's our sifting machine. For this, I have lots of options. I feel like emerald might be the best choice just because it's the hardest ore for me to get right now. Ruby is easy to find in redstone veins, coal, of course, in coal veins, diamond in diamond veins. So I think I'm going to take the emerald. Having this sifter now really exacerbates a problem I've been having for a while, and that's that our little wall here with 4 amps of power is just not really scalable. I want to basically rip all this out, and we're going to replace all of the 4x tin cable with 16x redstone alloy cable, and then also set everything up to have automatic inputs and outputs into barrels so that I can do bulk crafting a little bit easier in this space without having to babysit when I'm throwing 100 items into a single block machine. I have gone ahead already and made the LV versions of each of our remaining Steam machines. I should have done that a long time ago, but, you know, it's easy to get lazy and get complacent. So everything that's up against this wall is going to get ripped out. I'm going to put the cables in, and you will kind of get to see how it's all going to be set up. I still have to put a bunch of machines back in place, but this should give you an idea of how the whole thing's going to look. There's going to be one more row of barrels at the very top to run both sets of machines. Every one of these machines has a conveyor on the bottom side that pulls items in and then is set to auto output to the top side. So the middle row of barrels will end up being the outputs for the machines above and below, and then each machine has a dedicated input either below or above. At the very top here is a 16x battery buffer, so this is going to be able to run 16 amps through all of these machines, through all of these 16x redstone alloy cables. This was about 4 stacks of redstone alloy to get this much 16x cable, which is not a huge investment in terms of resources. Redstone alloy is not that expensive, but it is a pretty big investment in terms of EBF time right now. For now, this battery buffer is just going to be fed by the 4 turbines that I already had. I'm just going to tuck those up in the sort of crawl space area. But if needed, I can now expand that up to 8 or 12 or, I mean, even 16, although at that point I would probably get rid of the battery buffer amps of generation, and we'd be able to just not change anything down here because this is already all set for 16. just to demonstrate how much more coal we're going to get out of our coal. This purified coal ore is just a washed, crushed coal ore, and it's already been quadrupled. So if we go ahead and throw this into here now, it's not the fastest craft in the whole wide world, but when it is done, right, it outputs to here. We got 5 coal out of just that one piece. And that's already really only a quarter of an ore. The expected yield is about 16 coal for each coal ore at this point, after the quadrupling from maceration and then quadrupling again effectively from the sifting machine. After about an hour, I've only done half of the coal, but we've gotten, well, not quite 8 stacks. It is a probabilistic recipe. If we check the sifter here, you can see that it's all probability based. And while this, I believe, averages out to 4 per purified coal, you're never going to quite get it exactly. All this coal, though, is going to make huge amounts of pollution. And I actually lost my hazmat suit a few weeks ago when I was building the EBF, I think. If you go look back at the footage from the EBF episode, you might actually be able to notice that I was in creative mode for a couple of those clips, just because I was having negative effects from pollution and needed to be able to record. Everything was actually built in survival. I do occasionally use creative and spectator for recording, but never for actual gameplay. At any rate, the hazmat suit is rebuildable now that we are in MV. The main MV requirement is these reinforced glass lenses, and you can see that we need an MV lathe to make these from reinforced glass plate. That's not too bad. We can get that from reinforced glass, which we get from advanced alloy and glass as an alloy smelter. That's not a problem at all. But the MV lathe, if we go ahead and look at the requirements for the MV lathe, needs a flawless diamond. Everything else here is pretty approachable for us right now. The diamond, we pretty much have to get from sifting. I've already gone ahead and gotten a couple stacks of purified diamond ore. We're going to let that sift. And while that's going, I'm going to start working on some of the other prerequisites to rebuild our hazmat suit. With all the recipes selected up here, you can see that beyond the lenses, we need 20 rubber sheets as well as 5 ingots worth of molten rubber. We need 4 orange wool and 4 orange carpets. Carpets, you can see we can make easily in a cutting machine these days. That's not a problem. The orange wool, we can either do one at a time with dye, or I can just make a paintbrush and we can do all, well, 7. We only need 6, but all 7 of the wool that we need to dye. The paintbrush is actually really straightforward, from woven cotton and a couple of sticks. So I can just grab a little bit of cotton, get this paintbrush, get the wool ready to go. I have some rubber sheets available right now. I might have to make a little bit of fresh rubber, but that's pretty easy. We make rubber all the time. And before you know it, we will have ourselves another hazmat suit. I've gathered all of our materials. The boots are actually done because they got just cast as part of making the rubber. I can also go ahead and make the leggings and the suit right now. Just a little bit of glue and an assembly machine. So all that leaves is the reinforced glass lenses, which, as we said, need the advanced lathe and specifically a flawless diamond. I'm hoping, if I check the output chest, oh yeah, we have several. Lots of diamonds. So beautiful, we got the diamond we need. Everything else for the advanced lathe is pretty standard, just a motor and a piston. So this will be real quick to build, and then we'll be able to cut these reinforced glass lenses. I am going to go ahead and just, I guess, use this recipe in the alloy smelter. I should have a little bit of glass. Yeah, I do have some glass. Ooh, it's clear glass. Okay, no, I do have regular glass too. Okay. So the regular glass plus a advanced alloy ingot, and I suspect the best way to make these is still just like iron bronze tin. Yeah, I don't think that Invar is cheap enough that I want to upgrade to Invar at this end. Certainly not aluminium. So iron bronze tin, and we will get the reinforced glass, make our MV lathe, and have our hazmat suit rebuilt. We've got our reinforced glass plates. We've got our fancy new lathe. So right up here, we can throw this on and mute it because all these machines are very loud. And once we get those lenses, we will be able to finish rebuilding the hazmat suit. Lenses are done. I've already got some glue in our assembling machine. There it is. I don't know where any of my machines are anymore. I'm going to have to relearn the layout. We should be able to just one at a time do orange carpet and the wool. And lastly, our fancy new lenses. And everything should have ended up in the barrel. There it is. We have a brand new fancy hazmat suit. Hopefully I manage not to lose this one. Now that we have power sort of rehandled, and now that I can actually spend time in the dirty chunks again with those machines running full time, I think it's time to keep pushing forward into MV. For today, I think that means the extruder. The extruder gets us so many things so much cheaper. We do, in order to complete this quest, have to make a bunch of these extruder shapes, which is going to take a hot second. The extruder itself is just some cupronickel wire, steel fluid pipe. It's all, again, pretty standard stuff. For each of these extruder shapes, these are made exactly the same as the shapes used in the fluid solidifier, just with different base shapes. So you're pouring 4 steel of molten over the various casting forms. I'm going to go ahead and make all of these casting forms, and I will catch up with you when we have this extruder available.
10 minutes later.
There's our extruder. There are some things that we're going to want to always make with the extruder now, even though it is potentially a little more expensive power-wise. There are some things we can't make at all without the extruder. And there are some things that are more efficient. But even like rods and bolts, because those can be extruded directly now, we no longer have to deal with like the dust byproduct of making rods on the lathe. Now that I have an extruder, let's take advantage of that and get ourselves what is probably the most useful tool we're going to get for quite a while, and that's our first prospector. There are several veins that I haven't found yet, some of which I'm going to need in order to push into HV. Plus, it just makes finding more of the same old resources easier. The prospector itself isn't too bad to craft. It needs a couple of MB circuits, some plates, sulfuric acid, hydroxide. The drill tip, we're going to be able to extrude. I did make the extrusion mold for drill tips. Sulfuric acid we have. Hydroxide is really easy in a chemical reactor. This is not how this works in the real world. Hydroxide does not like to exist on its own. but we'll make it. And then the last part of getting the prospector scanner is going to be an MV sensor. Again, there's nothing here that's too crazy. Some aluminium, electrum, which I don't know if I have made yet or not, but electrum is just gold and silver in an alloy smelter. That's really easy. The only thing that's an issue here is this flawless emerald. I do not have any flawless emeralds. Fortunately, and you might almost think that I planned it this way, I did take the purified emerald ore as a quest reward earlier today. So we're going to be able to sieve this emerald, and hopefully we don't roll a natural one. We'll get the flawless emerald we need for the emitter, and we will go ahead and get ourselves an MV prospector. As far as materials go, I think I'm going to go ahead and just use mana steel. That gives it plenty of durability. It ends up with a 5x5 chunk area. I don't know if that's just normal for all MV prospectors. No. I think it's 3x3 by default. So the mana steel gives us a slightly larger area. Worthwhile investment of mana steel, in my opinion. We did get several flawless emeralds, and we're not even done sieving yet. There's still plenty of emerald to go. So we will have plenty of those for future sensors. But I think we've got everything, and we should be able to just... Yeah, there we go. There is our MV scanner. That prospector is going to make it much easier and indeed possible to find a couple of rare veins that we're going to need. For stainless steel, we need manganese, which we're not getting out of manganese ore initially. I think it's out of spessartine. Yeah, there's the manganese vein. So we have grossular, spessartine, pyrolusite, and tantalite, which also has tantalum, which we're going to need. So this is one of the rare veins that we need to find. The other rare vein we need to find is mica. Canthal coils cannot be made without mica. For our lower tier coils, the cupronickel, we were able to skip the mica and use a different material, but we have to use mica here. But we're not going to need those ores for a couple of episodes. Next time, we're going to, I think, jump into silicon processing. So that means getting solar grade silicon out of our raw silicon, going through the whole etching process, and ultimately getting the silicon-based recipes for LV and MV circuits, and possibly HV circuits? I'm not sure if we can get all the way to HV circuits without doing some of the other stuff on the path to HV. But certainly we'll go as far as we can through the circuit chain. Beyond that, stainless steel is the main HV material. And to make stainless steel, we're going to want to upgrade our EBFs, upgrade to Canthal coils, as I was mentioning earlier, and honestly probably make a second EBF, because trying to scrape by on just one EBF as we get further and further into the pack is going to be quite a challenge. So there's lots to do. I think silicon's going to be a good self-contained project for the next episode. If you enjoyed this episode, though, be sure to leave a like and do consider subscribing, and I will see you next time.